Hello. I just read chapter, I think it was 32 of Coruscant Nights, Jedi Twilight. Now I have to apologise now if you hear any sniffling. For a few weeks I have had a bit of a sniffly nose. It's been quite a bit of pollen in the air, so I've had quite a sniffly nose. And also it doesn't necessarily help. And if it just sorry, my mind's that. And since I woke up, it's particularly been worse. So, oh, so you have to forgive me if it is different about this. We pick up with Caird, who luckily isn't dead at the moment. Uh, um, when we and it's told that he just can't move. His body refuses to move, and the pain he's feeling is similar to a pain he felt as a hatchling when he ran into a beehive nest. And the bees stung him. And Sheezel's there, and he asks Caird, who did he try to kill him on his own initiative, or did Underlord Perhy give him the order to try and kill him? And initially he stays quiet, and Sheezel slaps his face, not gently but not hard, um, and tells him that I know you can talk, and Cairds just says a rude Feline word, a Feline curse word, which Sheezel just backhands Caird after that and orders for him to have another blast. Caird is again described as going back into the night. Um, we're also told that if Caird told the truth, that his life would be spared. So, yeah, Caird's really not having it good. He just wants to get out. Then we pick up with Nick, Jax, Labyrinth, Dur, and I5. And the rest of the chapter's from Nick's perspective, and he's asking Jax about the parties and maths, and he said he expected him to probably get Labyrinth, but he's asking uh about 10 and I5. And Jax says that he's not really sure why they're part of the party. I'm gonna have to kind of look at the book again. And he says that the droid has saved their lives a few times, and it's with the Celestin. And he says that the droid claims it knew his father. And Nick says, "Do you mean Dur owns the droid?" And Jax just says, "I wish that's what I mean." Or what was it? What does it say? Believe me, I wish that was what I mean. Yeah. And throughout the rest of the chapter, we're just told about how Nick is going to be so hurt to try and to have to betray Jax and to betray Jax and everyone else, and how we're also told about his weak connection to the Force and about when I5, since he was all tensed up, he realised that Jax could maybe sense that he was he was nervous, and then try and probe further and further and find out what was going on. And we saw that even though Nick has a very weak connection to the Force, a tenuous connection as to keep saying, um, he can still can't control his body to calm his mind, slow his heartbeat and respiration, bring down his temperature. Pardon me. And we're told that just after we did that, that was when Jax probed his mind, and then he whispered something to I-5, which of course we've seen that bit of the conversation. And I think they're now where Shizor and Cares are now, and we um, and again we're told that Nick feels that, and again we just saw about how Nick is gonna really find it hard to bring it in him to betray them, and we're told that he was hoping he could think of some way to not have to betray them, but he knows what how failing Darth Vader will not be good. Um, that's and he knows that failing Darth Vader, it, his people will die if he fails. They're not brought up at all in this chapter, but um, then they hear a voice, and Nick starts to get this sense, starts to feel as if there's a sense of danger, and you can't tell whether it's his small connection to the Force that's giving him this sense, or if it's his subconscious and gut instinct. And he thinks, and he doubts the Jedi ever has a misgiving like that. And Jax and Lamanth draw their weapons. Jax's lightsaber, Lamanth her blasters. Um, and we're told that Nick is eager to pull his blaster, and we're told that he's that he doesn't have to go head first into danger. The Jedi will, but of course he needs Jax alive to bring him to Vader, and we're told that Vader's not going to be happy if Jax winds up getting himself killed. Um, Anyway, then Lamanth and Jax jump from the corner, and that's when Blaster Fire goes, and that's where we end the chapter. Now, was there anything I missed? Doesn't look like it. Yeah, it says a lot. It says part of him didn't want to betray Jax, but a larger part of him knew that failing Darth Vader would be like walking into a Nexus den. So that's what it says. But yeah, first off, poor Caird. I really do want. I don't think I have looked at Caird's Wikipedia page because again, the last time we were with him, I wasn't sure if he had died or not. So, I remember looking at his page before and it said he hasn't died, but I just had to double check. Um, and it looks like he never does get to go home, which is extremely disappointing because I really do want him to be able to get home. Um, Pardon me. So yeah, I just poor kid. I really do want him to be able to get home. Um, then of course we have Nick, and you understand why this is so difficult for him, because he doesn't want to betray Jax, but also he doesn't want his people to get killed. It. So you really do understand how Nick feels in this chapter, and you understand that he knows what he's doing is wrong, but it's either one person gets hurt compared to thousands of people get hurt, and he just, and even though it is one person, he's struggling to bring himself to do it. So you have loads, so you really do understand Nick's tough decision in this chapter, And I'll be honest, I thought Nick wasn't going to be in the book after chapter 10, but no, apparently he was. He looks to have had a rather large role, so yeah. Um, but yeah, honestly, I don't have a whole lot to say on this chapter. And again, with this, having a bit of a sniffly nose, it's a little bit hard for some reason. I think my mind just isn't as quick at the moment. I don't quite know why. Maybe it's got something to do with sniff my nose. Maybe it's I'm not feeling well. I don't know. I, I feel all right. Um, but yeah, I definitely feel a bit slow at the moment, so maybe that's why. I definitely was having a little bit of trouble trying to read this chapter as well. You know, I had to go over a few bits a couple times to properly get it in my head. So yeah, maybe I just need to either it's I'm still tired or because I was awake for quite a while, or it's just not not feeling 100%. Um, but yeah, I enjoyed the chapter. Again, it's not really a whole lot to talk about. Um, oh, I didn't really bring it up a whole lot, but it is made clear that when Nick says, "Oh, it looks like you've masked quite a few. It looks like you've masked quite the party." Um, Jax says, "Oh yeah, you think?" Um, in a sarcastic way that is said, which is said with a bit of annoyance. And again, it kind of just shows us Jax's impatience coming through. Again, it's nothing really too new that we haven't seen with his character before yet at the moment. Um, he we've kind of just hit a bit of a dead end with his character where we're just pushing and pushing what we know about him rather than learning more about him at the moment. I think because it's been a little bit of a while since we've had anything that really pushes anything new with his character. You know, we kind of just been pushing um mainly what we do know about his character for now. Now that we kind of had a bit of a personality established, it would be nice for him to have a little bit more nuance. But still, he's reaching the point where he's actually getting quite interesting now. Just because of how un-Jedi-like he is. So yeah. But anyway, and I think it's very. I also think because of how and I think this also adds a very different kind of feel to Jax than a Feather Solon in Last of the Jedi, because that book series was very much about Ferris. In Ferris's mind, Ferris was not a Jedi anymore, and it said at the end of the first book that he can't be a Jedi anymore. He has attachments, and at the end, and toward the end, and in the 10th book, Obi-Wan tells him that he is a Jedi, and even at the end of the first book, it tells him that the new Jedi will have attachments, and maybe that will be a strength. And Obi-Wan tells him in the 10th book that he is a Jedi. Here, Jax firmly believes he's still a Jedi, but he's very un-Jedi-like. Whereas Ferris is able to acknowledge that he's un-Jedi-like and learns that, you know, he that maybe that can be how the new Jedi are. Jax is very un-Jedi-like, and he still believes he is a Jedi. And especially in comparison to Ferris, for the most part, up until Roan's death, he was able to kind of keep a logical mind. Whereas Jax here, again, he's impatient. He's getting annoyed easily. He's having these compulsive thoughts about I-5, about wanting to shove him out the skimmer, sorry. Um, and those are all very un-Jedi-like stuff that even in for Last of the Jedi territory, I think is still a bit much. So yeah, but yeah, it's very interesting, Jax's character, and it's quite interesting to kind of have a bit of an opposite spin on you know, Ferris. You know, this is kind of like the opposite of what Ferris was. Jax is a bit proving to be a bit more the opposite of Ferris in the Last of the Jedi books. I haven't read Jedi Quest. I've read the Last of the Jedi. If you want to, you can go watch those reviews on my channel. I, 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 they were literally just the main content I was putting out for quite literally months, for quite a while. So, yeah. Anyway, that brings an end to this review. Don't really have much else to say, so thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Hello, I've just read chapter 33 of Coruscant Nights, Jedi Twilight, and we pick back up right where we left off. Jax is jumping into the line of around the corner, and he tries to reach out for the Force, and it goes void. He can't sense it at all, and that completely costs him, and he gets shot a few times, and he stumbles down to his knees in pain. And then he hears the blast of fire cease, and he's confused for a moment. When he opens his eyes, looks up, and Labyrinth is there shooting with their own blasters. The blast of fire has ceased, but he still hears it. That's what it was. And he sees Labyrinth still shooting her blasters in front of Jax, and blocking the incoming fire from Bug Eyes and Shizor. And eventually, she shoots in the droids. She shoots Bug Eyes. He sees blaster cannon arm, and and it deactivates the droids momentarily. And he tells them, and she tells them not to move. But both of them not to move. Oh no, deactivates the arm. Sorry. And Jax tries to rise, and then he feels I-5 helping him, which he angrily shrugs him away. And he sees Bug Eyes, and assumes that, yeah, that's definitely Bug Eyes, and he sees another species he doesn't recognise on the floor, which of course is Cat. And he doesn't recognise what species Caird is, and he wonders where he's from, and then he notices that Shizor has gone from green to reddish orange. And he sees that Labyrinth looks confused as well, and it says he just about has enough time to make the connection. He doesn't clarify what the connection is. I assume it means Jax makes a connection that Shizor's gotten angry before Shizor opens fire. And ironically enough, now is when Jax is able to access the Force. When he's being shot at, because he isn't having the chance to doubt his abilities in the Force. He just has to ultimately hope to use it. And he starts reflecting the bolts, and he tries to make a jump over to them about 10 meters. And when he lands, he stumbles. He is because he's been shot a few times. His leg it just isn't stable. It just not collapses, but it buckles when he lands, and Shizor takes advantage of this. And Shizor takes Caird and orders Bug Eyes to come with him, and they run off, and Labyrinth follows them. And that's when Den, I-5, and Nick come running over, and I, and Nick shouts out a control phase, and Jax only realises what it means. Suwoohama, that's what it was. And Jax doesn't realise what it is until it's too late. And I-5 asks if he's okay, and Jax is frustrated by it, but he just shoves out all of that frustration from his voice. and tells him that he's fine, and we're told that he hates that he's thinking of I5 as a he, not it. And it brings that up just before he says yeah, I'm fine. And we're told about how much he hates that he's thinking that thinking of the droids as a he, not it. You know, because to him a droid's just a droid, it's a machine, but he hates that this droid that I5 is more human-like, and that he purposely turns away so he doesn't have to see the relief that some I5 would probably show. And Nick says, "Oh, not to worry. You know, it's hard to remember it's hard to remember control phases after you've been shot a few times." Um, and Labyrinth comes back alone, and she says that she she's lost them and that she got confused. Um, and Jax notes that he knows that must have been a lot for her to admit, and that he wonders if Labyrinth is having a similar problem connecting to the Force. Um, but when he checks her, her threads are as strong as ever. And I5 says that he has a plan, and he asks if he can take the lead. And he asks if, and also adds in if you don't mind. And Jax does mind, but he knows again this is their only way. This is their only opportunity to actually be able to pursue them. So he agrees. But again, he really again, this is kind of like he only takes up I5's suggestions if it's absolutely necessary, if there's no alternative, because you just know Jax would have refused and suggested something else, but or maybe he wouldn't. Maybe he wouldn't have, because I5 has proven himself to be quite capable. Um, but still, I think it's quite curious actually. But you know, I think Jax is just more keen in his own capabilities, and you know doesn't really want I5 to take up the position. That's something brought up a little bit later in the chapter, which we'll get to. Um, but yeah, that's curious. I'm not too sure whether Jax would take up I5's ideas if there were other options. I have a feeling maybe he would at least consider them because I5 has proven to be almost faultless in his suggestions so far. You know, he would definitely reluctantly and in an annoyed way consider them, but I don't think. But I'm not entirely sure. I think he would just try to rely on his own capabilities at the moment. Um, and I thought, and even though it's not specifically clarified, it was. I know what they're probably going to try and track the pheromones that Feline released because that was brought up earlier in the book. And they start pursuing She's all the droids and Caird. Um, and once they get back outside, apparently it's storm, but because they're so deep, you can't really tell. Um, aside from the lights on the buildings being turned off, but it look and the um and I5 says Nick, it appears they've taken your skimmer, and they see another, and they look around and they see quite a few rides that they can take, and the one that they wind up taking is a size of G17 land speeder, which I actually really want to search up just to see this. I don't think there's an image, but you never know. Nah, there isn't. Okay. Um, and they take it, and it's seen better days. And anytime there's a slight, anytime there's anything slightly uneven in the pavement, it just yaws at me. Um, its only rises about a dozen centimeters off the ground, and it's extremely slow. And Zenda says, "I could walk faster than this, drunk." Um, and I5 keeps tracking the scent and he notes that she's or seems to have is also seems to be wearing some rather rich um the residue. He says, there are very few feline this far down level, he explains. They tend to be a more cosmopolitan species. Interestingly, I'm also detecting the residue of brands of oils and soaps associated with the extremely rich on his skin. Who is he anyway? Lambeth asks. He looks familiar. He should, the sort of sunset denter. He's Prince Caesar of House Ciceron. Rumours are that he's an up-and-coming player in Black Sun. Feline rarely leave their homeworld. He's one of the few exceptions. And silence is there for a few minutes. And it's brought up that if Black Sun are involved, this is it, this has taken an unexpected and nasty turn potentially. And I5 says he's half a kilometre ahead, and that he's he's speaking with the ports to arrange his flight, and um Nick says impressive. Your video and audio sensors must be as good as your olfactory sensors. And I5 explains that I believe explains that it's much simpler actually. Radar and an all-band transmission receiver. I believe the latter is illegal for a protocol droid to possess, Jax remarks. I believe you're right. Um, and Durr asks if he lifts how will they follow them, and Nick replies that that he has a ship that they can use. Um, and we're told that, and then we get into a bit of water earlier with Jax. And we're told that the affair seems to be mushrooming out of control. He's this is from a solo mission intended to honour Master Peel's his old Jedi Master's final request into now a into into a having a group of people helping him that he's not even leading anymore, and it seems to be a droid is leading them. Um, and we're told that he isn't sure what he could what he could do about it, or if he should do anything about it. I'll just read off this last bit because it's going to be easier. He wasn't sure what to do about it. Worse, he wasn't even sure if he should do anything about it. The mission was the important thing after all, but it was becoming harder and harder to remember that. And that's where we end the chapter. So yeah. You really just see you see a bit of Jax's pride coming through in here. You know, you can tell that he has quite a bit of pride in himself and his own capabilities, and you're starting to really see that come through in this chapter. We've seen it in other chapters as well, but I think this is kind of thing that's solidified it for me. And how, you know, he really doesn't like that he's not leading anymore. He doesn't like that. He really does not like I5, and that now he's taken up the reins of pretty much leader in an unintentional way. And you really see how frustrated he is, you know, because this is meant to be his mission. This is meant to be his mission, a mission he's doing to honour his master. And you understand why he feels the way he does about losing a position of leadership, because to him this is the mission that Peel gave to him. This is the mission Peel sent Rostu over to him to complete. You know, this is pretty much his mission. And now the reins have been taken up by I5. You can understand his frustration there, but also, he, equally, he's really getting. It feels like he's getting frustrated at I5 for almost no reason. He's letting his own beliefs come in, and it's almost developing into a hatred of him, I think. So yeah. Another thing that was really interesting is a small mention of Larenth possibly struggling with connecting to the Force as well. And I think even though Jax did check her and see if she was struggling, it's possible that she seems to be okay. It's possible that she is all right, because for Jax that she is suffering those same problems, because for Jax, you know, it's there for him occasionally, and then it just goes, and then it comes right back soon afterwards. So it's possible that she's suffering from the same problem. So yeah, that was very interesting as well. Um, I do not like that Nick has said that he has a ship they can pursue them, because you know that this is gonna wind up being he brings them over to Vader, and I and yeah, it's I don't like that he's given that suggestion. I really do not like that. But yeah, again with Jax, you you really see I was just not giving I5 the time of day. He really isn't, and at this point it's starting to feel like there's something really new going on with how he feels about I5 now. I think again the problem with Jax, I think, has been that he appears in about 3 or 4 chapters um before chapter 10, and it was only at chapter 10 that we actually started to see how he is like as a person, because we've seen his thoughts in in chapters before that, but they never really properly developed out who he is as a person. We're starting to get him developed out as a person now. The problem is that because was in quite a few chapters and we didn't really learn much about him in that time, now that's going to always shadow Jax's character. Whenever a new character thing comes up, it's going to be, oh, finally giving him some personality. Whenever, like now, his character development, the development of who he is as a person has kind of come to a halt. It feels like we're back at square one. So it's very, I think Jax's character is in a way a little bit problematic because of the way he started out as. I think we just needed to see him. I think 11th probably should have been introduced alongside Jax in the same chapter as Jax rather than after chapter 10. I think if we saw Jax speaking with 11th in his first chapter, that would have developed a little bit more of what he's like as a person, and then that would have also developed a bit of 11th, and it wouldn't feel like it's so finally giving him some character. I think that's maybe I think that's probably one of the big problems I'm having with the book so far. Um, so yeah, not yeah. So yeah, um, it's just Jax, and now it feels like he's getting a bit static in who he is now, and I think it wouldn't be as problematic either. It's fine if we've seen everything there is to see about Jax's character, but I don't think it would be as problematic if it didn't stop, if he just didn't have any, if it wasn't in the situation where it is now, where he's not having really any character development. It's not really, we're not seeing anything where he's somewhat worn, maybe he's somewhat starting to see I5's usefulness. He reluctantly is admitting, we've seen a little bit of it, but he's reluctantly admitting that I5 is probably, that I5 has its uses, but yeah, he just feels a little bit static at the moment in the development he's had. um I think it is just, we just didn't learn enough about him early on, and now that's just going to shadow his character. I think that's just the main problem I'm having with his character at the moment. I think he's developed into a good character. Don't get me wrong. I think he's developed into a good character, um, and one that's quite interesting. But it definitely is one. It's just because of the way he was introduced, that's always going to shadow him. And unfortunately, I also think that because there's not been any really significant changes in his character so far, there's not really been a whole lot to talk about I think quite a few of the chapters that we've had with Jax recently. Just because there's not been much development in his character, much to note. Um, so I think that's kind of why most of these videos have been brought up. I mean, the summary rather than my thoughts, which is a bit of a shame, but yeah. Um, is there anything I want to discuss with Jax's character? Anything I haven't brought up before? Again, there is that pride I brought up. Yeah, it definitely has a bit of pride in himself. That's you know, I5 is kind of taking away from him. But you know, I can't brought it up earlier, so yeah. I don't really think I have anything else to say, so I'm going to end it here. So thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Hello everyone. I've just read chapter 34 of Coruscant Nights, Jedi Twilight. This one should not be a long one, because there really is not a lot to talk about. Um, it's literally just a chapter about getting our characters from point A to point B. That's literally all it is. Um, it's basically, I can probably summarize it very quickly. Shizor and Bug Eyes take Caird's ship, and they start, and Caird thinks they're going to go over to back to the Mizzenite Hall, but they don't, and instead they go to the opposite side of the planet, which is on the direct opposite side of Imperial City, and I think it's called the Antipodes in the what? In the factory district, which is infamous for being in a massive state of disrepair, um, and how we're told about how it has once flourished, but the advancement of technology on other worlds pretty much rendered it, pretty much meant that everything, the operations there moved off world. And Caird really does not get a good feeling about it, and when they land, Shizor says to the drop says to Bug Eyes Zuwu Hama, which you know, was said in last chapter as a control phrase. And it's made clear this chapter that what it means is it basically causes Bug Eyes to come under the control of the last person who said it. And Shizor and Bug Eyes start to leave, and Bug Eyes says that this isn't the location of the Whiplash, and Shizor says that he'll be able to find a place for where he can, I'll just read out some relative dialogue. Here we go. Bug Eyes says, this isn't the location of the Whiplash, and then Shizor says Zuwu Hama to get him under his control, and Bug Eyes says, what would you have me do? Sheezel says, accompany me, I'll show you where to download your data. And Bug Eyes says, of course. And then Sheezel puts a muzzle gag on Caird, so he can't say the phrase because he remembers what it means, and he starts to remember what it means. And Caird starts to follow them outside, and he just gets a really bad feeling about everything. Really, not a whole lot to talk about. The most interesting thing, I think, is that Bug Eyes looks to be looking for the Whiplash. Whether that's the... And of course, Vader knows where Bug Eyes is, so that either could be Bug Eyes is either wanting to help them, or he's looking to destroy them. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens. Again, with Caird, I really want to see what happens with him. I really hope he's able to somehow get home. But yeah, there's really, really not a whole lot to say on this chapter. It's nice to see a little bit more of Coruscant, and it's nice to see the opposite side of Coruscant. You know, I'm not sure if we've ever really gone that far on Coruscant. It's really is described as being a place of disrepair. So yeah, it's very interesting that side of Coruscant. Generally, you know, it's been nice seeing other sides of Coruscant in this book. Someone did actually comment that on one of my Coruscant Night reviews. I'm not sure if it feels as varied as it was in Last of the Jedi Underworld. I think Underworld probably did a better job of really making you feel as if really making you feel like you went back in time on Coruscant. That also could have just been because, you know, they went to the very bottom levels and below. Here, they're still a little bit further up. But I feel like Last of the Jedi maybe did a bit of a better job of making you feel like Coruscant has really that the lower levels were really badly managed, and you can really see how much disrepair they were in, etc. But here in Coruscant Nights, though, you know, it's still nice to see other sides of Coruscant, even if they do feel a little bit more like the upper levels, even though they're not. They still have that feeling, whereas Underworld has a very different feeling, and I think that's just mainly because it also focused on the very bottom levels. Anyway, yeah, that's really it. There's nothing more to really say on this chapter. I think it's about 5 or 6 pages long, yet which is like the average length of a chapter in this book, yet there's really just nothing to talk about. So, yeah, but I have to do the review because I got to, so, yeah. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and goodbye.